Hey everyone, it's your old pal Jeff Horowitz, and this is Dentist in the Know Humpday Happy Hour. So, welcome. Hope you're having a great week. As you know, Humpday Happy Hour, we are the backstage pass for current trends, politics, and education in the dental world. We are live and we're over maybe a glass of wine or your favorite beverage. But we are here to share with you everything going on in dentistry. Tonight, we have an amazing guest who has been with us before. We're happy to have him again, Dr. Edward Zuckerberg, who has been working hard in a startup company and has been studying periodontal pathogens for a long time now. He knows more about periodontal pathogens than so many out there, and he has so much to offer in this arena of oral systemic health. So we're really excited to be talking to him and having our usual banter. So I'm joined by one of my best friends in the industry, Dr. Chad Duplantis, and Dr. Jennifer Bell will be joining us in just a few moments. But as we wait for her, I'm just here to tell you that we are all dentists, we are all educators, and we're all business owners. And our job is to bring all of you in the know. And I'll be honest, I haven't seen Chad in about as long as most of you haven't seen Chad. So I'm going to ask Chad, how you doing?
Doing pretty good. How about you, bud?
I'm good. I hadn't heard your voice in about a week. So I'm like, other than scrolling through Facebook, and when I see a little video with you on it, I hear your voice for a blip of a second. But, that's it.
So, today was one of those days where you would think in 2025 that it would be a little bit easier, but I had been having problems with my phone, so I ordered a new phone, and they make it really easy to transfer things over, like from old phone to new phone. And I'm pretty savvy with technology, so I do the whole transfer and everything. Well, as soon as it transfers, my wife becomes me and I become my wife. So I get this text that was sent to my daughter, and I was like, I didn't send this. How did this get sent? And then I respond, and she's like, I just told you. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? And then my wife's responding. She's like, who the hell is this? Because hers is showing up Ellen, mine's showing up Chad. And I'm like, I
could really have some fun with this, Chad. You maybe shouldn't have let that information out of the bag.
And then an hour later, we finally got things worked out, and I lost text messages, I lost voicemails, and that's where I think we could do better. But it is what it is. We got the new phone. Hopefully it'll work. We'll see. So,
hey, if that's your worst problem today, you're doing all right, buddy.
Today, that's my worst problem today. Yeah. Yeah. How about you?
Had another day today. So, I think I reached out to you guys last week because I had like an entire day, like pretty much what I do in the sleep and TMJ practice is, we're working with so many appliances, and whether it's a sleep appliance, a TMJ appliance, a deprogrammer, or somebody's in, orthodontics or whatever, almost everybody has something, an adjunct to their therapy that they're supposed to bring with them to every appointment. And I've had like 2 weeks in a row, all of our messaging, we send out text messages. Every appointment reminder says, please be sure to bring your appliance, anything removable, please bring with you to your appointment. And I swear it's like, oh, I'm being treated for sleep, but I didn't know I was supposed to bring my sleep appliance with me to the appointment.
Well, that's kind of important for what you do, but it's it happens to us all. Come in for a retainer check, forgot my retainer. Come in for a night guard check, forgot my night guard. Come in for a sleep appliance check, forgot my sleep appliance. It doesn't seem like it gets much easier than to remember that, but obviously it does. So I get it, bro. I totally get it.
I don't know. I mean, and we have used every piece of technology we have to make sure that doesn't happen.
And look who decided to join us.
Ladies and
Thanks. I
gentlemen,
appreciate
Dr.
it.
Jennifer Bell.
Enter stage left.
And not even a bead of sweat dripping down your forehead.
Not one. But a bun. Got him on bun.
Hey,
That tells you the kind of day.
knock on wood, besides not being able to get my camera or microphone to work at the beginning of this this video cast, we have not had any technical glitches yet.
You know why? Because I was threatening to fire it. And now...
Yeah. That wonderful world of AI hurt us. So
the hammer was coming down. It knew.
It knew.
So how's JB's week going?
This is a fun job, right? We like dentistry.
Yeah. I was actually, before the show, I was talking with Dr. Zuckerberg about, finding the balance. And, it's like, I think we're all pretty much here. Here.
It is so challenging how much is so out of your control. And I think most of us went into the career because we genuinely want to help people and we want to take care of them. We want to provide a pathway to health and prosperity. And man, there's just so many other forces that don't feel that way about us, in particular the insurance company. But, we're working through some stuff internally at our office, and it's stupid stuff like this insurance company needed to pay for a claim for a patient, but they decided that this other patient over here that I treated 3 months prior actually wasn't covered during that time. So they're going to recoup that $198 from the patient I just treated. So I'm like, okay, from an accounting perspective, how does this actually look on my books? Because now I have to go readjust the ledger for that patient who has also come into my office since then. And I've told them, nope, everything's good. You don't owe me any money. And now all of a sudden I'm going to call them and say, yeah, in fact, you owe me $200. Okay.
Yeah.
And so that was my news story last week.
No, it was my
and it was JB's the week before, Chad.
I didn't know that.
And that was only MetLife that has agreed to stop doing it. Everyone else is still freaking doing it. It's just so annoying. Anyway, that's my week as well. We're really, really having a lot of rain here in North Carolina, which, sorry for those of you who are struggling with forest fires and it's super dry where you are. We're having quite the opposite where it's pretty saturated. We're having some low-level flooding. So, welcome to August.
Yeah, bright and cheery, just like your news.
No, my news is always terrible.
Yeah.
Speaking of, do you have some news?
Since you've given us some bad news already, that would be the perfect segue into what you do every week, which is depress us on a much higher level.
I do. It's fine. Yeah. That's
all right.
fine.
We're gonna let you have at it because we got a great guest tonight, and we can't wait for Dr. Zuckerberg to come on.
Same. Okay, fellows, let's get down to the news. The biggest news story of the week was that the dentist who was being tried for poisoning his wife in Colorado was found guilty and will be going to prison. I'm not sure if we have the final sentence, if that's been shared yet, but he'll be going away for quite some time, I do believe, and not a lot of contesting. I think the jury deliberated for about 8 hours before they came back with all of the final verdicts there. So sorry to see it. We bring a lot of baggage with us when we come into dentistry, but we have to be very mindful not to take the other people down with us while we're dealing with our own crap. This is kind of a dumb story, but I get blamed a lot for my news not being overly happy or joyous. And I led off with something that was pretty terrible as well. I want to fix that. I learned something today that is kind of dental related, but I think it needs some spotlight. Hey guys, can you come join me back for just a second?
Yes.
Okay. Did you guys grow up, because we're mostly of the same generation, give or take 2 decades. That was a subtle bang. Anyway.
Yeah. I've learned to ignore.
Okay, fair. So did you do birthday parties or celebrate at McDonald's?
Yes.
No,
For
Jeff
me.
didn't. Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Yeah, not for my
Jeff,
kids.
No.
Birthday parties. McDonald's was not like a common birthday party. I mean,
Okay.
most people did it at the house or backyard or whatever.
Sure. But you know the characters.
Yeah.
You got Ronald McDonald, the Hamburglar,
Grimace. Yeah.
So it's been officially released what Grimace is.
What is Grimace?
Do you have have you ever thought about what he is? Did you ever put him in a box and say, I think Grimace is a blob. I think he's stop looking it up, Chad. If you ruin this.
I couldn't remember what he looked like. I'm not looking at what he is. I couldn't remember what Grimace looks like.
It's like a big purple ghost.
He's just like a big old thing.
That's all I'm looking at. I'm looking at what he is.
People have hypothesized that he was a blob, maybe spilled grape juice.
Yeah, high C there. Yeah.
No, McDonald's came out. And why is this important to Dennis in the Know? Because Grimace is a taste bud.
No way.
Did not see that coming, did you? He's a taste bud.
There you go. Let that sink in, Dr. Zuckerberg.
Yeah. Number one, my taste buds aren't purple. So that was a little off-putting just in general. I feel like they're making it up now. I feel like they made this imaginary character and now they have to give him some type of identity. And so they've decided he's a taste bud. But he doesn't look anything like a taste bud. He's not even
kind of like asking what was Oscar the Grouch. I mean,
what was he? I don't know. Now you're just going to come out all of a sudden and say he was trash. A leaf. No, he's not a leaf.
Yeah, he was trash.
He was not trash.
He wasn't trash.
He wasn't trash.
You're trash, Chad.
A belovable favorite, actually. Okay. That's all the news I have for you this week.
That's it?
That's it. It's really kind of slow. There's a lot of fighting. You got the Texas Democrats are on hiatus. Maybe Chad knows something about that. You've got, just a lot of crazy stuff happening in the world. But honestly, it's kind of a slow time for a lot of legislation. Fluoride is still hot in the discussion. They're definitely looking at the systemic or the oral fluoride supplements. I think those are probably going to go away. And then I think there's still a lot of compression on municipality water supplies as well. So we're watching that for sure. But it's really kind of quiet right now. Just stay tuned. Once everybody gets back from August break, it'll change.
Well, I mean, obviously we want to learn about more characters. I think every week there should be a new character release, like what was Oscar the Grouch? And
okay.
What was Snuffleupagus?
Right.
Yeah. There are a lot of nebulous characters that have been floating around in our childhood memories that we need some true definition.
We need answers.
Yeah.
Was Big Bird actually a bird?
Yeah, I believe he was.
He didn't fly.
Well, it doesn't matter. There's a lot of birds that don't fly.
Was he really a bird? Well, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I'd like to see some genetic testing. That's all I'm saying.
These and many other questions answered on Dentists in the Know.
I bet Dr. Zuckerberg is going to share actually some very enlightening news about the world of the oral microbiome, which I am way more interested in hearing about than the legislative woes of the day.
Yeah, if he's still on after the crazy banter that we've just had. But
yeah, he might have fallen asleep.
Hey, you too.
Why don't you introduce him?
Why don't I introduce him, and then why don't you bring him up? Because, I can't walk and chew gum at the same time. So Dr. Edward J. Zuckerberg is a 1978 graduate of NYU College of Dentistry. From 1979 to 2013, he owned practices in Brooklyn and Dobbs Ferry, New York, and he has always been an early adopter of technology, introducing his first PC into the office in 1986. I'm going to say it was probably DOS related. And then he fully equipped his home with broadband access in 1996. His early adoption of technologies included digital radiography, CAD/CAM, creation of a paperless office, which caught the attention of various industry leaders, encouraging him to lecture, write articles, and beta testing technologies. He's been married to his wife for 45 years, Karen. She's a retired psychiatrist. They have 3 daughters, Randy, who was the former marketing director at Facebook and now the CEO of Zuckerberg Media, Donna, who received her classics PhD at Princeton and is now an author, and Ariel, who is a partner in a financial firm in San Francisco, as well as a son who you might have heard of that happened to be the founder of Facebook, Mark. And they still have a wonderful relationship with all of their children and 10 grandchildren. He still lectures internationally.
Soon to be 11, Chad. I got that news before the show.
Soon to be 11 grandchildren.
Yes.
There you go. Congrats. He lectures nationally and internationally on the oral systemic connection, which you know how much we love that here. He's a venture partner at Revere Partners, the first independent venture fund for oral health. He acts as the chief dental officer for Viome and the chief education officer for both Cloud Dentistry and Oral BioLife, in addition to treating patients part-time in Cupertino, California. Good God, could you not live in any better places? You live in some pretty fantastic places there. But in all, it is an honor again to have you on here. We're so excited to see how things are going for you and just really appreciate you taking the time out of your evening to join us.
It's great to be back on the show, Chad, and to join you guys.
Well, we're so glad to have you.
And of all the amazing places he lived, I want to hear where in Brooklyn.
Well, I grew up in the Flatbush section of Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Just a stone's throw from Brooklyn College. In fact, I walked to Midwood High School and Brooklyn College and took the subway to NYU Dental School. So I lived home with my folks right up until the day I got married.
How about that? Maimonides Hospital, lived in Mill Basin for about 4 years, and then we lived in Flatbush for a year. Then we did what all good Jews do, and we migrated to New Jersey.
Well, we went to Westchester, which was not like what everyone else in Brooklyn did. We went to Westchester because right after we got married, my wife got into New York Medical College in Valhalla. And I had bought a practice in Brooklyn about 3 months before we got married, with the understanding that if we had to pick up and go out of state, we would do whatever we needed to do. But the Westchester to Brooklyn commute was a little rough. But we, after growing up, I in Brooklyn, her in Queens, we really liked the sort of suburban environment in Westchester County, and yet still close enough to our family in the city and, the hub that Manhattan is, Broadway shows, etc. It was a great place to live and a great place we decided to raise a family. So ultimately from 1990 to 2013, my only practice was in the home, in our house, which was
that was so common there.
The ultimate in having a family-based practice, and the ultimate in being around for my kids, and watching them grow up and not missing a second grade school play, and you name it. It was a great experience that I wouldn't do over any other way.
How long ago did you move to California? Was it 2013?
We started talking about it in the probably 2010. At that time, we had Randy and Mark already living in California, and Ariel, our youngest, was going to school in Southern California at Claremont McKenna. And so it was 3 out of 4. And, we were leaning that way, but ultimately the trigger was pulled the night that our first grandchild was born. May 1st, 2011. We had been practicing in the office in Dobbs Ferry that day when the call came in that my daughter's water broke. And we were on a 7:30 Delta flight that got into San Francisco at 10:30 at night. And we were there, and my wife was holding our first grandchild shortly after midnight. And she looked at me and said, "I'm staying. Are you coming?" So that from there, we embarked on a 2-year transition of finding the right person to buy the house from us and take over the practice. It turned out to be one of my previous associates who'd worked for me from 1998 to 2000, who I stayed in touch with, and he wanted to take it over, and so he still operates it to this day in the same location.
Good for you.
We fully moved to California in 2013.
Yeah.
And I guess what jump-started my second career was his phone call. Kudos to Howard Ferran of Dentaltown. My receptionist was tough to get through. She once let a salesperson get through to me because he asked to speak to Eddie. And she just assumed he was a friend of mine, and he wasn't. And she apologized profusely. A couple of weeks later, she hung up on my mother when she asked for Eddie. But she came back to me kind of sheepishly in late 2010 and said, "There's a guy on the phone by the name of Howard Ferran who said you will speak to him." And I was between patients, and I looked at her and said, "He's right, I will." And Howard was having a problem with his Facebook page. And he found out that Mark's dad was a dentist, and he figured I could help him, and I did. And he asked me to then, after I helped him, he asked me to write an article, "Does my office need a Facebook page?" Which I wrote, I think September 2010 issue of Dentaltown. Well received. They asked me to write something else a few months later, and I wrote on technology integration in the dental practice. And from there came the flood of phone calls and emails. Will you lecture? Will you advise my startup? Help me out. And it turned out that this was right during our transition and moving from New York to California. So it kind of helped propel me and launch me into my second career.
Very cool. Very cool.
So talk a little bit about where this affinity for the oral microbiome and pathogens and the oral systemic connection. Talk to us a little bit about where that passion came from, and kind of your journey with a company that is now at the forefront of helping dentists really navigate the oral systemic connection.
So from, while I did do a little dentistry in California, I really only have a handful of official patients that I'm in charge of primary care for. So, it's like one morning a month I go into the office kind of thing. But from 2013 to 2020, what people wanted to hear from me, being who I am and the family, etc., they wanted to hear about dentists and social media. How do you use this? In the beginning it was how do you do it, and then later on it became how do you kill it. What I really wanted to talk about was technology integration. So I kind of figured out a way to incorporate the two into my talks. And I was doing quite a few lectures on those topics. And right up until the start of the pandemic, I think in 2020, I had about 20 lectures scheduled. All live, all over the country, some around international. And then, of course, they all got canceled. And while I did a few webinars and, continued to meet over Zoom with the companies I was advising, helping them move their startups along, it was a pretty quiet year on the professional front, but it was a great year for some life changes, more golf, doing a ton of cooking, which I always wanted to do, more photography. I'm a competitive bridge player, but instead of playing face-to-face bridge, there was a lot of online bridge followed by Zoom calls and reviews of the hands, and a lot of learning. I think it was early 2021. I remember saying to my wife, this may be the end of the road. Maybe this is the end. Looks like this pandemic thing's going on for a while. If I die tomorrow, we'll be known for our famous offspring. We have 4 great kids that are really doing great things in the world, and I'm okay with that. I served my profession. I served patients. I spent the last 8 years giving back to my colleagues and passing my knowledge along. Maybe this is it. And ironically, around the same time, I got a call from Jeremy Krell, who I had met at a lot of dental meetings. Jeremy and I were like both serial dental entrepreneur advisors. And we would keep meeting, like at the Yankee meeting, Chicago, Midwinter, Greater New York, etc. And Jeremy, being about half my age, we were both frustrated that the one area that we really couldn't help startups with was raising capital. And Jeremy decided to do something about it. He started Revere Partners, the first independent venture fund that invests only in early and pre-seed oral healthcare companies. And he asked me to join as a venture partner. He said, you'll do pretty much what you're doing now, but you'll do it, by Zoom calls, doing diligence on companies, because of your background, you're going to handle all the ones with high tech, AI interpretation of dental images, robotics, smart toothbrushes, anything with high tech stuff. And around, I agreed, why not? And around the same time, somebody who I knew outside of Revere asked me if I would take a look at a company that he got introduced to that he thought might be really something significant. So I accepted a call from a guy by the name of Dan Sindelar and the team at Keystone Bio. And they had a monoclonal antibody to eradicate the bacteria P. gingivalis. And, I vaguely remembered P. gingivalis from microbiology in dental school 40-something years ago and knew it was one of the bad bugs of periodontal disease, but really couldn't help with much else. I really didn't know much else about it. And I remember doing a Facebook post that night, asking my friends, I asked my dental and medical people to exclude themselves from the poll, asking people, have you ever heard of P. gingivalis? And I got 78 answers, and 77 of them were no. And the one who said yes later admitted to me she'd never heard of it, but she took Latin in high school and figured out it was a bacteria that affected the gums. So zero public knowledge. And I didn't know how bacteria in the mouth cause systemic disease. I mean, I knew they were connected. I mean, I remember, over the course of my years of practice, attempting to rehabilitate a 38-year-old with advanced periodontal disease who refused treatment. And then a few years later found out at age 42 that he died of a massive heart attack. And I'm thinking in my head, might doing treatment for this guy have affected, a change? Maybe the outcome would have been different. And I remembered treating a pregnant patient with an endodontic abscess in her middle trimester. She came in with a swollen face and let me take some x-rays, and she had 4 of the worst root canals I'd ever seen on her, all 4 of her permanent first molars. The gutta percha went about halfway down the roots. The crowns had no anatomy. They had open contacts. It was just horrific dentistry.
Wait, was Chad practicing then?
Probably not.
Okay.
Not like his root canal work, though. So,
Anyhow, I got medical clearance from her OBGYN who wanted me to treat these teeth during the middle trimester. He said, we don't need her with a problem later on. And of course, a course of antibiotic knocked out the fluctuant abscess. And when she came back to see me a week later, and I presented the treatment plan, which included redoing these root canals and crowns, she said, I think I'm going to wait till after the baby's born. And I said, trust me, life gets really complicated, especially if you don't have, live-in nanny help taking care of yourself. But whatever, I couldn't talk her into it, and heard a couple of months later that she miscarried in the 7th month. Did the bacteria from her mouth play a role in that? Probably, but certainly, this is only anecdotal. And these are the kind of things that I shared with colleagues, and they had stories too.
Yeah.
We all knew that the mouth was connected to the body, but, our knowledge base, what they taught us in dental school, is that when you have gum disease and the gums are swollen, the local capillaries are enlarged, and the patient's living with a bacteremia, bacteria constantly filtering from the gingival tissues into the bloodstream, where they do damage to the external body organs. And we were, that was the extent of our knowledge of how the mouth was connected to the body. But we also knew that, one of the most evolved mammalian evolutionary protective mechanisms is the blood-brain barrier. And the blood-brain barrier is pretty impervious to almost every bacteria that afflicts mankind, with the possible exception of meningococcus, which is why meningitis will kill you in 2 days untreated. So, when I started reading articles about periodontal disease having a connection to dementia and Alzheimer's disease, it didn't make sense to me until the guys at Keystone Bio started explaining it all to me. And I mean, I can load some slides if
Yeah, that'd be great.
That would be awesome. I think we should do that.
Okay.
And once again, you won't be able to see us, but we'll be able to see you, Dr. Zuckerberg. So just let me know when you're ready to come back, and I'll remove that.
Okay. So what I've got up here is this pyramid, which is really the latest information we have on periodontal disease. And what you see at the base of the pyramid, which is primarily what we call the yellow zone, or the early colonizers. That's your aerobic organisms that can thrive on the surface of the gum, and your streptococcus and organisms that really are the initial colonizers that lay the groundwork, if that plaque and tartar is not removed at regular intervals, for the next stage of bacteria, which you see in the middle colonizers, or the orange levels. You have some bridging organisms there, like F. nucleatum, which is really important to get to the top zone, which is the red zone, which is your real bad bugs, your P. gingivalis and Tannerella forsythia and Treponema denticola. They can't get there unless we let oral periodontal gingivitis progress onto periodontitis and get from the yellow early colonizers to the orange to the red. If they don't get to the red, this whole oral systemic thing never happens. And most people are unaware that there's a link between bacteria and the major maladies affecting humans. But if you look at this table of Alzheimer's, cardiovascular disease, cystic fibrosis, esophageal cancer, arthritis, diabetes, etc., there's several bacteria in here, but the one that appears in every box is P. gingivalis. It is the bad mama of periodontal disease. And to understand how it works, we look at a scanning electron micrograph of an organism of PG, and what the arrow points to are these outer membrane vesicles that are present, each organism of P. gingivalis literally secretes thousands of these outer membrane vesicles. And they contain these toxic proteins, or what we call gingipains. And interestingly enough, while the bacteria P. gingivalis can't cross the blood-brain barrier, the gingipains can. And what we now know is that the bacteria is very happy living in the gingival tissues. It doesn't need to leave the gum ever. It's living deep in the pocket. It's an anaerobic organism. There's very little oxygen in the base of the periodontal pocket, and it really thrives. And the reason it produces these gingipains is that that toxic protein poisons the gum tissues, creates an acidic environment and a lot of inflammation that makes for an ideal environment for the organism to thrive. Now, because there's literally tons and tons of these gingipains in the gum tissues, they do make their way into the bloodstream and proliferate throughout the body. And they do cross the blood-brain barrier. It's not a bacteria. It is able to cross the blood-brain barrier. And in the brain, they do interfere with synaptic transmission between the neurons. So when we do autopsies on the brains of people with Alzheimer's, in literally 100% of autopsies of patients with Alzheimer's, you will find the DNA of P. gingivalis in the form of these gingipains or toxic proteins. And the body does attempt to have an immune response to clean them up in the brain. And the byproduct of the macrophages from the immune system engulfing these gingipains is the production of beta amyloid plaque in the brain, which we all know is pathognomonic signs of the presence of dementia and Alzheimer's disease. This is just a diagram of how the organism, which is on the left, creates this little pocket in the wall that these poisons accumulate in and then get kicked off the organism to become freely floating. So, as early as 1995, Dr. Booth and his team did this, it may have been a female, did this study in the UK. It was a small sample study, 14 patients, all with periodontal disease and all with high levels of PG. And a lot of people think that monoclonal antibodies are new therapies. The first time a lot of people heard about monoclonal antibodies was the COVID vaccine. But in reality, monoclonal antibodies were approved for human research and targeting bacteria and organisms as early as the 1970s and 80s. So these guys were working with a monoclonal antibody, which were shown in the lab in vitro to be effective in neutralizing P. gingivalis. So they tested their hypothesis on 14 patients, and all 14 patients went through scaling and root planing and irrigation after the scaling and root planing. 7 got irrigation with the monoclonal antibody, 7 with saline. The saline group showed return of normal levels of PG within 3 weeks, which is what we know happens after regular scaling and root planing now. We have a little drop off for 3 weeks, and that's it. The 7 that got the monoclonal antibody, the earliest measurable amount of any PG was 9 months later. That's incredible, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why didn't they fly with this? Because in 1995, we had no idea, none, that there was a correlation between periodontal disease and heart disease, dementia, diabetes, all these other illnesses. Now that we know, this group headed by Keystone Bio tried to kick this into high gear and regenerate this. So, a review of the current literature tells us that atherosclerosis is an inflammatory-based disease that causes plaque buildup in the walls of the arteries. And I would venture to guess that 99% plus of the audience, you guys as well, may have never heard of the term foam cells. I never heard of foam cells myself until about a year ago. But they're a key component of atherosclerotic plaque, and they play a central role in the development of atherosclerosis. They form when the monocytes differentiate into macrophages and take up these modified lipid proteins. And this study, published only 2 years ago, showed that P. gingivalis promotes foam cell formation. So it plays a key role in the development of atherosclerosis. And this is just a diagram of the narrowing of an artery as a result of the calcifications caused when the body tries to repair damage to the endothelial linings of our arteries. And again, P. gingivalis, one of its effects is to weaken and promote increased permeability, leading to atherosclerosis, which we know is a precursor for heart disease, heart attacks, and strokes. This study is just from May, like 2 months ago, that P. gingivalis actually promotes instability of the atherosclerotic plaque. So once you've got narrowing of the arteries or atherosclerotic disease, PG plays a role in dislodging that plaque, which can lead to embolisms and heart attacks. So it's never too late to, even in patients with already existing heart disease, to put them on a program of periodontal healthcare. We understand the pathway for diabetes very well also, how P. gingivalis attenuates insulin sensitivity. The gingipains, once they're in the bloodstream, they're not just going to the brain and into the vessels. They're going everywhere. They're going into the liver where, they're impairing glycogen synthesis. So the body is getting the right amount of insulin and directing the synthesis of glycogen into ATPs. Remember that one from high school chemistry? ATPs are the energy that power our cells and mitochondria. If we're not breaking glycogen down into ATPs, guess what? Diabetes. And so doing periodontal therapy on patients with diabetes magically improves their periodontal status. We've seen patients go from uncontrollable via insulin to the ability to just control them by diet when we control their period. So along the way, I did a lot of experiments, some of them on my own mouth. I have had periodontal disease for 25 years, see my hygienist every 3 months. My own mother had periodontal disease and died of Alzheimer's in 2004, 21 years ago. So what you're seeing on the left is my salivary sample from a company called Direct Diagnostics. Unfortunately, they went under last summer, but I really liked what they were doing and having helped them incorporate their HR5 or high-risk 5 test, targeting 5 of the main bacteria in periodontal disease. I've helped them, the team at Viome, where I'm chief dental officer, make this part of their reporting score. And what you see on the left is my own personal score the night before my 3-month recall. And you can see my Aggregatibacter, my P. gingivalis on the left, my PG, they're through the roof. My Tannerella, my Treponema denticola is in the red zone. My F. nucleatum is only yellow, that's good, and no Treponema denticola. And then what you see on the right is a retest that I did 3 days after my teeth were professionally cleaned. My AA is gone. My PG is still in the red zone, although it's significantly down from where it was. And my TF went from red to yellow, and my FN went from yellow to green. That's the good news. The bad news is 3 weeks later, my retest looked just like the one on the left. So any benefit I got in reducing my bacterial load from that scaling and root planing that I go through every 3 months was gone. And when I presented this to my wife, she said, well, sounds kind of simplistic, but why don't you just get your teeth cleaned every month? And I'm like, okay, that could work, but we have a hard enough time getting patients back every 3 months, getting insurance coverage for patients to come back every 3 months, and finding adequate staffing and hygiene manpower hours to treat patients as it is. So, there's got to be a better answer. And what you're looking at now is the diagram on the left shows an inflamed condition and a healthy condition in the same person. And the thing is that person's going to have the same DNA. Most salivary diagnostics out there on the market use DNA measurements of individual bacteria. And DNA tells us really nothing except for quantity. The other thing about P. gingivalis is while 80% of people have high levels, we think only 15 to 20% are expressing gingipains in toxic levels. So how do we find out who they are? The answer is RNA. And Viome is the only salivary detection company that is actually looking at RNA. And messenger RNA provides information on the current way that an organism is expressing its genotype and its phenotype. Actually, what's going on. If any of you have ever done 23andMe, that's a DNA-based test. Your DNA is the same when you're born, it's the same throughout your life, it's the same when you die. So while a 23andMe can tell you, okay, you're predisposed to dry skin, they can't tell if you actually have dry skin. So their solution is to bombard their users with emails. And if you've done their test, you know what I'm talking about. Do you have dry skin? They're asking. Well, they know you have the genes for it, but they don't know if you're expressing it. And the only way they're going to find out is if you tell them. And maybe somehow supplying them with that information will help them zero in on specific tests. But with mRNA, and this would be impossible without artificial intelligence and machine learning, the team at Viome has to sift through 750 trillion nucleotides of data to find out what's going on in 30 predictive models. You can't do that unless you've got the support of computer power. Here's an example of what a practitioner will see when they submit a salivary sample to Viome. They'll get a bacterial health score, a bacterial activity score that's not based just on numbers of bacteria, but is also based on the mRNA and what they're expressing. So it's not just do you have P. gingivalis, but is your P. gingivalis expressing high levels of gingipains that are circulating through your body? Caries risk score is something that just about any salivary detection company can determine. Basically, they're measuring strep mutans. Implant failure risk is also based on P. gingivalis. And wouldn't you, before you place an implant, want to know if your patient is at a risk for peri-implantitis and implant failure? Certainly, that seems to me incredibly valuable information. And the bacteria associated with fungal activity score and bad breath score, it turns out, are also associated with oral cancer prediction. And so Viome can actually predict with a 95% degree of certainty the likelihood of an individual of developing or that there may be present squamous cell carcinoma of the oral cavity or the throat. I mean, knowing that, shouldn't we be screening every patient for oral cancer by doing a Viome test on just every patient in our practice? And here's the kind of score you get on the HR5 from Viome. So I really think this is the best salivary detection system on the market and the only one that can screen for oral cancer. So we've made patients aware of this disease, and there's a lot more in the literature now about people seeing in the newspaper, seeing in Men's Health, Women's Health, lay people magazines. Dentists are seeing in the professional journals the link between gum disease and systemic health. And the patients want to know what we could do to them. So, I mean, right now, this is what we're limited to. Scaling and root planing, lasers, cellular introduction of hydrogen peroxide, chlorhexidine, and monocycline through a variety of products like Arrestin, Atrodox, Perioprotect, etc. Some dentists are playing around with platelet-rich plasma. We're using blue lights. We're using ozone to get more oxygen to combat bacteria that theoretically don't like oxygen. Guided biofilm therapy, etc. One area that I think we should be using now, which is a great tool for us, is getting more of our patients on probiotics. And the problem with probiotics is that almost every probiotic out on the market is a canned one-size-fits-all. To my knowledge, Viome is, and again, disclaimer, I'm the chief dental officer at Viome. Viome is the only company that's actually creating a custom oral probiotic. And what they do is they take the information on your salivary microbiome, on your dysbiotic salivary microbiome from the salivary sample that's submitted to them, and they're able to produce lozenges and toothpaste that are custom generated for that individual patient. So my lozenges and toothpaste will be different from yours, Chad, and different from the next person's. And they'll, you can get them on a subscription basis. So while, yes, probiotics help in general to stimulate the good bacteria, customizing them to what you need specifically is the next level. This is something that's not available yet in humans, but ironically, it's going to be available for dogs as early as next month. My own dog had to have 18 teeth extracted for periodontal disease last year. I didn't realize dogs have 42 teeth. So she's still got a lot going on in there, and she's still able to chew and function. But what these guys have done, and this is crazy. Can you imagine regenerating bone in teeth that have had furcal bone loss, repairing and regenerating furcal bone and bone height? How do they do it? They've got this injectable, or it's done with a blunt irrigation needle into the subgingival tissues after a scaling and root planing or a perio maintenance visit, and then it's light cured. So unlike Arrestin, which starts like coming out of the pocket as soon as we do it, in a few days it's gone. This stuff is light curable and will stay in the pocket for up to a month or more. And what happens is under function, under chewing, clenching, even in our sleep, bringing our teeth together, we know our teeth move. Movement against the substance causes the release of piezoelectric energy. And that energy is responsible for stimulating osteoblastic activity and promoting bone growth, and probably at the simultaneously maybe lysing cell membranes of the pathogenic bacteria in the subgingival tissues. So without introduction of an antimicrobial, we have antimicrobial properties in destroying the bacteria and promoting osteoblastic activity to regrow bone. On the bottom, you see here the actual photographs of a canine with a molar with Furcal bone disease and interproximal bone loss. And on the right, you can see the bone fill that occurred after a course of treatment. So the vet health product for this will be on the market and available to veterinarians this fall. And we're hoping for human trials within a year, and hopefully, this will be in dentist armamentarium in maybe 2 years. Right now, we don't really have much to offer people, right? They hate periodontal treatment. It's the number one therapy that we recommend that patients say no to. And I can't say I blame them. It's like they're leaving, they're in pain, they don't have anything to show for their money other than time spent in the chair and a significant portion of their wallet being tapped out. With whitening, they get whiter teeth. With implants, and bridge work, they get teeth to replace missing teeth. With periodontal disease, we're telling them they're getting healthy, but they can't see that. So that's why this is a really tough sell and why lots of patients say no to treatment. I love some of the other stuff going on. I'll mention one more thing and then I'll stop. This is from the lab of Dr. Ezra Sahinger at Penn Dental Medicine, and I was fortunate enough to be invited to give the keynote in May of this year at UPenn Dental's Center for Innovation in Dentistry. And I met Dr. Sahinger and read about her work where she's tackling cellular senescence. Cellular senescence is something that we've known about and is part of the aging process. As we get older, we have more cells dying than regenerating. That's pretty much what aging is. And senotherapy is tackling aging. So Dr. Sanger and others are looking at periodontal disease as actually an aging disease. So they're targeting the tissues in gum disease with similar types of therapies by using senolytics, which are molecules that actually cause the death of senescent cells, reducing their harmful effects. And what she found was an interesting combination of two substances. We call it, or she calls it, the DQ treatment. The D standing for dasatinib, which is actually a chemotherapeutic agent. The Q is quercetin, which is an antioxidant. Mm-hmm. It's a flavonoid. And the downside of quercetin is, to be honest, it tastes like hell. We've got to figure out a way to get this in a form. And guess who did it? The guy from Keystone Bio, which, that's another sad tale of woe. They couldn't get VC funding to bring their monoclonal antibody to market. So he's kind of pivoted to this new line of products that he calls Refresh Life. And they've got an interesting website, refreshlifepro.com, where dentists can find out more about these products, which are actually available now. And, what's in them is, you know, a whole bunch of products. The ingredient list includes quercetin, which I just mentioned has been shown to actually inhibit senescence and actually inhibits P. gingivalis as well. So they've got quercetin, green tea, EGCG, polyphenol, cinnamon, Ayurvedic medicines, neem, cloves, licorice root, moringa, and burdock root. So any of you who are into, you know, natural type substances will have heard of some of these substances. Think of them as like a high-powered supplement for periodontal health. And if you visit refreshlifepro.com, you can get a study on this stuff and also find out more about product availability. So they've got 2 formulas right now that you can actually order and get your patients using these. And, you know, I think it's something that on top of probiotics, on top of scaling and root planing, it's probably the best thing we could do to fill our patients in that interval, knowing that the benefits of our scaling and root planing are gone after 3 weeks. I'm sorry. We need to fill that gap for the next 9-10 weeks till they come back for their 3-month recall. We need to keep levels of PG and these other these other pathogenic bacteria down low, and the best ways we can do it are to support the good healthy bacteria through probiotics, and hopefully this Refresh Life Pro product will be a good tool. We know quercetin has been shown to work and reduce cellular senescence and levels of P. gingivalis.
Does it work in reverse if if we're unable, because I totally appreciate where you're coming from, that, you know, we have the kitchen sink of things that we can throw at it, but nothing is curative. And so you keep trying to find the right mix of things.
I still really believe in this monoclonal antibody, and I really think one day someone's going to fork over the 25-30 million we need to fund the research to get it to human trials.
Is there anything systemic that they're also focusing? Like, can it work in inverse as well? So if we're focused orally, can we also see things?
There are a couple of companies that have tried targeting circulating gingipains with a pill. One company called Cortexime actually had their IPO in during the early pandemic, late 2020. They IPO'd at about $100 million, which is not, you know, a huge sum of money for an IPO.
Mm-hmm.
But 6 months later, in June of 2021, Biogen had the first new Alzheimer's drug approved in 18 years. And like other Alzheimer's drugs on the market, they're targeting beta amyloid plaque buildup in the brain. Frankly, by the time a patient has significant, they're gone. They're gone.
Right.
That's like, you know, the horse is out of the barn. You know, it's way too late. So Cortexime's approach was to target the circulating gingipains, and they had a chemical called the long chemical name. It's irrelevant because it never got to market. But when Biogen's drug got approved, I remember it was on my birthday in June of 2021. The FDA advisory panel had 10 of supposedly the smartest docs in the country. And they all advised against this drug. And yet it got approved anyway. And the day after it got approved, they all resigned their positions.
Hmm.
But the market loved it. The market, Biogen stock went from 200 to over 400, and Cortexime, which had just IPO'd 6 months earlier, went from a market value of 100 mil up to almost 4 billion. The CEO and CFO, though, must have known something because they bailed out on almost half their stock at that point in time. And later that summer, the FDA halted their drug trial because their drug was toxic to the liver.
Mm.
And if you think about it, it would have been an incredible moneymaker because they're targeting ginger pains, which is not the source of the problem. The source of the problem is P. gingivalis in the gum tissues, which is spewing the ginger pains. You know, targeting ginger pains that are in the bloodstream already is like targeting beta amyloid plaque in the brain. So it didn't work. The company went belly up. There's still some companies trying to fiddle with the ginger pains because some data extracted from their trials that did reach, we were able to analyze, showed that if you broke out a small segment of their trial patient population that had periodontal disease, high levels of P. gingivalis, and were given this drug targeting the circulating ginger pains, their rate of dementia over a year actually slowed at a rate greater than 3 times the currently most prescribed drug for Alzheimer's disease. So it was effective in slowing down the continuing breakdown in dementia. But imagine if we could just stop and flush the existence of ginger pains altogether. And with Viome salivary diagnostic, which is the only one on the market that can give a gum health score that takes into consideration not just levels of PG, but targeting levels of ginger pains, we really know which patients we need to single out on.
Yeah.
So, and I'm in
That's
that.
great information. This was actually a CE event. This was not just a conversation.
Yeah. Would you be willing to come back and do a webinar for us?
Anytime.
Oh, so great. So great. I just really appreciate your time.
Well, and honestly, it's great for dentists, but lay people need to hear this just as much as we do. I mean, to find and continue to push for avenues, not just Band-Aids to solutions, which, medicine wants it too.
The problem I have, I've done some interviews with like the New York Times and Men's Health, Women's Health magazines like that. And when they finish filtering everything that they've heard from me, there's like a trace mention of P. gingivalis and no mention of circulating ginger pains in the articles. They basically say that you've got to go to the dentist regularly because gum disease leads to Alzheimer's, heart disease, digestive cancer, diabetes, but they don't fill in the puzzle because they don't think that a general lay readership can understand this.
I agree with you 100%.
I argue that's not the case. I argue that it's information that will propel patients to demand in their dental office, what are you doing to determine if I'm at risk for
exactly
disease, and what are you doing to treat me, and will lead to greater case acceptance.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, we've seen this in the sleep industry, that it's basically that the patients are getting the information finally, and then they're coming to the dentist and demanding that their primary care providers and their dentists actually be competent in all of these areas. And I think that's the way to really drive an industry, is to start by having good public education. So I applaud you for that.
Consumer facing,
Yeah, it's why here I am at age 71, feeling like I've gotta keep doing this. I feel like my combined experience in the on the patient care side, my experience with technology, my experience in understanding how ideas and concepts, what they have to go through to get to market. Lots of people know more than me about all of those things, but I have the whole picture. And probably, because of my name, I'm able to get doors open, get interviews and be in demand as a speaker. And I kind of feel it's my responsibility to help move the needle for the profession. I'd like nothing more than for dentistry to kind of become a primary care specialty of medicine of the oral cavity. That's what we are. We're not this siloed off profession that's separate from medicine, and which is way we're treated. I mean, even the way our patients go about getting reimbursement through dental insurance is antiquated and outdated and needs to be done away with. Dentistry needs to be covered as a necessary medical therapy by medical insurance to enable more people to get healthier mouths and healthier bodies.
Well, I think that is a great point to close on. I'm going to speak for the three of us and say, hey, sign us up. We want to work with you. So let us know how we can help. But I learned more about P. gingivalis tonight than I certainly learned in dental school. I don't know if you saw it. I was taking notes. I was getting in and reading every single slide. It was absolutely fantastic. But
I had my meta glasses on. They're not really meta glasses, but
these are.
I can put mine on.
But I will say this definitely hits close to home, because today I had the daughter of a patient come in, and she told me that her mother had recently had a stroke. Her mother had refused periodontal care, and her mother had refused medical care, and she threw a plaque, and it ended up in her brain, and she had a stroke, and it was not a good situation. So it can happen to any one of us, and it begs one to think, could we have done something differently in our practice that could have improved that? And all we can do is educate and provide the why and provide the solutions. So with that being said, I think let's close out. Thanks everybody for watching tonight. Thank you so much, Dr. Zuckerberg, for your time and your energy and your passion for the promotion of the oral systemic connection. So thank you very much for being here, and thanks everybody for watching. Have a great night.
Have a great night, everyone.
Here.
Right.
Thanks.